Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rise of Kingdoms video. This is Dragothien here, and today we're going to go over the top 24 wording clarifications inside of the skills and the commanders in Rise of Kingdoms. Because I'm a sponsored content creator for Rise of Kingdoms, I do have a top tier customer service person that we get to talk to on the regular and ask these questions for you all. These are the answers that I've received from them, and I've double and triple and quadruple checked with them and then merged them up with other people who are using the in-game methods for regular players like Charles and Julius and things like that. So I've compiled all this information for you all, and I'm hopefully going to be able to clarify all of these different wording statements inside of the skills for your commanders so you know how to use them properly and you're not going to expect something that's not necessarily going to be the case. So before we roll over to the transition, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, hit the bell notification. Make sure you do all those things. That's very helpful to me in this channel and certainly the community as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I want to make sure that we cover the new commanders because there's some verbiage issues or questions that we had when we were looking at those commanders. I'm going to start with YSS, his fourth skill in particular, and he likes to talk a lot. Let's go to the fourth skill here. It says increases attack of garrison troops by 5% up to 20% when his commander is serving as garrison commander. Then in separate sentence, it says gains a 10% chance of receiving a shield plus another 10% up to 30% more counterattack damage for the next 3 seconds. This is only applicable in garrison, guys. So whenever you see a skill like this where it's got this only applies in a rally, this only applies in a certain situation, and then following it, there's more sentences after it, it only applies to that situation. This was the clarification I got yesterday. Okay, so this is up to date as of yesterday. That was June 2nd, 2020. So increases attack for garrison troops. That also only applies to garrison troops for the shield and the counterattack damage that you'll receive. All of these buffs are garrison only, not open field, not rally. Something to think about. That's a big difference between what people normally thought versus the regular stuff. Okay, so that's number one. The other thing is, what does stronghold mean? Okay, so the second skill of YSS, and there are other commanders that have the word stronghold in it as well. Stronghold is any garrison situation. So any garrison. It doesn't matter what the structure is. Arc, open field, KVK, any type of structure whatsoever that you are garrisoning, this applies. Stronghold means all garrisons. So there's really no reason to have the word stronghold in the game, but that's what they're using sometimes, so that's what it means. I have a feeling that there's probably multiple translators for people who are doing the skills for the game, for English and French and the probably 30 or 40 other languages that they have this game in, and that's why there's a little bit of a transition issue on some of them have stronghold and some of them just say garrison commander. So stronghold means garrison commander, that's all that means. There's no special circumstance that a stronghold is versus a normal garrison. It's all the same. Third thing, control effects. And this is the other thing on Theodora that I wanted to show you guys. So her expertise says immediately removes any slow, which we know what a slow is, that's a snare, and control effects. Control effects is very specific, okay? And you guys have to understand what that means. Control effects are any type of debuff, okay, except for silence. So obviously technically you cannot remove a silence because to cast this skill, right, you have to cast it, and silence removes the ability for you to cast a skill. So this does not affect silence, but it affects everything else, okay? So what I mean by that is it affects disarm, which we'll go over when we start talking about Artemisia. It also affects Fierce as the Fire from Takeda, and it affects Tamiris' Poison Bleed. So the stacks that you get from the skill damage debuff, those get removed. Everything gets removed except for silence. Okay, so silence basically means that silence is one of the most one of the best crowd control effects in the game, because it can't be removed by a control effect removal. Okay, so, and again, slow is of course a slow. So this removes everything. That's crazy, right? A statement to make, and we've got just different things that. Let me go up to YSG for this one. A statement to make is, what does troop attack mean? Okay, so this is number 4. Troop attack is the attack pre-formula. Okay, so this is pre-damage calculation that goes into your normal attack and your counterattack number. This is the number that goes above your target's head that's white. And then also, if you're getting swarmed, that also impacts the counterattack damage that you give to people that are not your target but are hitting you as well. So that's what that means. So normal and counterattack. Also, this does affect skill damage as well. So when you're going into your damage factor, this damage factor has a calculation in the formula of the game that is affected somehow, some way by troop attack. That is the attack number that you see on the commander when you pull them out of your city, whenever you look at the troop buffs screen, whenever you're looking at a battle report. Okay, so that's number 4, troop attack. Now, another one. Genghis. Let's see which one it is. Here we go. So the second skill for Genghis, when troops led by this commander. When troops led by is the statement we're looking at here, and there are multiple commanders that have this verbiage in it in their skills. You can be primary or secondary. It applies to both. This does not mean that commander needs to be first. It means that you have to have them in the army, basically. So primary or secondary, this will apply. So when it says when troops led by this commander are attacked, this march speed bonus will be lost, and then troop march speed will be further reduced by 10%. That's the march speed 10% reduction. Also, again, the march speed bonus that you get from the first sentence goes away. So that's what that means. If this commander is being used, that's what happens. Primary or secondary, no problem. That's number 5. Number 6, skill damage versus active skill damage. You've got skill damage, or active skill damage, which is the first skill, active skill. Okay, that means that Rain of Arrows is an active skill, and when you have a buff like Destiny on YSG, it says increases active skill damage. So that means that it only applies to an active skill damage based skill. Conversely, if you go to, say, Alex, his second skill is a passive skill. That means YSG's damage bonus does not apply to Alex's damage factor here because it is a passive skill. Now, there are commanders in the game that have just skill damage enhancements, like Mehmed. His second skill says, and increases skill damage dealt. That means that active and passive skill damages are increased by 20% for your commander combination. So something to keep in mind when you're setting up your armies and you're trying to pair up the best pairs. This is what I look for whenever I'm doing my pairing videos for you. The synergy between not only active and passive skill damages, but also if they have additional skill damages, which is another thing that, that you have to understand too. What skills stack? So for instance, Lord of Land and Sea, you have skill damage dealt increased by 20%. This is a passive skill. Same thing with YSG. You have a 50% passive skill. These stack. These stack because they're passive. They're active all the time. That means that there's no casting needed to go ahead and have these skills available to you. Okay? So, for instance, active skills of the same type don't stack. That's the alternative. So passive skills stack, active skills don't stack. For instance, Constantine, his first skill has a 40% attack reduction, okay, for 5 seconds. If you go to Ethelfled, she has an attack, defense, and health reduction. Attack reduction overwrites the previous debuff. So what happens is, if you have Constantine first and Ethelfled second, Constantine will cast his skill. 2 seconds later, Ethelfled will overwrite his 5-second skill with her 2-second skill. Okay? You don't want to do that, right? You want to have maximum debuff time. So what you do is you make Ethelfled primary if your only purpose is to debuff. Make Ethelfled primary. Her skill will last 2 seconds. It ends when Constantine casts his skill for 5 seconds. So you will effectively have 7 seconds of attack reduction instead of, with Constantine being primary, Ethelfled secondary, you will only have 4. Okay? So that's what you need to understand with stacking debuffs and stacking buffs. If it's passive, they all stack. If they're active, they don't stack based on when the seconds happen. Okay, so you need to make sure you understand the timings of all this stuff. Damage dealt. So Saladin increases damage dealt to city garrisons by 15%. This is all damage dealt. Even though it doesn't say all damage dealt means all damage dealt. Same thing with YSS, the new commander that just came out. There's a skill here, and I'm trying to remember which one it is. Troop damage, troop defense. That's another one we're going to go over is troop damage. I'm pretty sure there was a damage belt. See, this one says all damage. So that's the same thing. All damage and then damage dealt. Those are the same verbiages. It's just they haven't. And here's the damage dealt one as well. Damage dealt also reduces target movement speed by 10%. So all damage, all types of damage is all damage dealt. Damage dealt means all damage dealt. It's all the same thing. Troop damage. So let's go back up to Charles here. There we go. Troop damage is your normal and your counterattack damage being boosted post formula. So for instance, on his shield, you have a damage bonus of 30% while his shield is up. And this is another thing I'm going to talk about. This is one of my points. Also increases troops damage by 30% when the shield is active. This will increase the white number, which is the calculation of all your attack and all the different factors that go into the formula of the white number of your target. Okay, so if you're targeting somebody and you're dealing and you're doing 3,000 damage, let's just make it easy, right? 3,000 normal and counterattack damage together, whatever that combination is, that's the total number, 3,000. With the shield, you'll do 3,900 damage because it's 30% higher post-formula. This is not pre-formula, it's post-formula. This is a really good one to have because it's not a multiplier, it's additive. Okay, you want that additive. You don't want the multiplicative, because when it's multiplicative inside of a formula, it's less than the greater. Okay, so another point. So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is number 11. The Shield of Charles Martel. This is something that a lot of people don't know as well. The shield can absorb massive damage for the next 4 seconds. Well, in regular gameplay, that shield really only lasts maybe 1 or 2 turns at best. And then people were wondering, well, does the troop damage stay around even though the shield is gone? Yes, it does. So the shield may be gone, but the actual effect of the 30% does last for the full 4 seconds. So you do get that 30% troop damage bonus for 4 full seconds. Okay, so something to keep in mind. And again, that's a really good thing to have because it's not indicative of if your shield is gone or not. Next one, while your troops are on the map. Alex is a perfect example of this. He has a couple of skills that list while troops are on the map. So while Alexander's troops are on the map, what does that mean? It means when you're in an army on the map or a rally. It does apply to both. And this is a good distinction because there's another one that we're going to go over that only applies to just armies. So, and does not apply to rallies. So this is very important. So while Alexander's troops are on the map, they're immune to all damage reduction effects. This is for normal armies and for rallies. Okay, it's number 12. Number 13, field battles. This is the other one that I'm talking about. So on the first skill, it says field battles and then garrison. Okay, field battles means just like what it sounds. It's just the army, the open field only. Okay. This does not apply to rallies. So there is no situation, okay, where the damage here will evidently apply in a rally. So if you rally with Yi Sun Shin, you get nothing. From what I've been told, this is how it's done. So I don't know if maybe you just get the march speed reduction and no actual damage happens, because this is only for open field and this damage is only for while in garrison. I don't know if maybe one of these will just normally apply or whatever, but for field battles, this is applicable only on open field, not on rallies. Okay, so that's number 13. Let's go to number 14. Normal attacks only affect the target. This is just a general statement, but it's something to be aware of. You've got normal attacks, and then you've got counter attacks, and that's the combination. Those two combined equal your actual damage number that's in white above your target. Okay, now that's why also if you're getting swarmed, your target is taking more white damage than the people who are swarming you, because they're only getting, and that's the next point, counterattack damage. Counterattack damage is half of the number that goes above your target in addition to the normal attack damage, and then counterattack damage is the only thing that applies to people who are swarming you that you're not attacking. Okay, so again, if you have YSG and you have 3 people hitting you and you're targeting the one person in the middle, the person in the middle will have a higher white number, and then the 2 people to the side of you that are hitting you will have a lower white number. However, because he has a circular AoE, or if they're all 3 in front of you, they will also receive a red number, which is the skill damage number. So they'll get lower numbers for the people who are swarming you, because they are only receiving counterattack damage, not normal attack damage, whereas your target is receiving normal and counterattack damage. The next one, silence. Okay, so there's 3 different controls that you need to be aware of. Let me go to Herman, because silence on Herman is a thing. It's also on Wu. It's also on quite a few other commanders. Okay, so Herman, his first skill silences the target for 2 seconds. This means skills cannot be cast. So active skills cannot be cast, but the normal attacks remain. So when we're fighting Herman, and say he gets the skill off before my skill goes off, my skill will be delayed by 2 seconds. However, he will still get the white damage numbers above his army, because I'm still normal attacking. I'm just silenced. I can't cast anything. Okay, so it is a pretty significant damage debuff to use a silence. And again, this is the only control that I know of that cannot be removed, because to remove a control, you need to cast a skill to remove it, unless they're innately immune. Like say Attila. Attila is immune to silence. You don't have to cast it. But there's very, very few commanders and very, very few situations that are immune to silence. So silence to me is one of the best controls in the game, because it's basically unavoidable, especially if you use it in the right way. Disarm, on the other hand, so disarm is another control effect. Artemisia has disarm. Let's see which one it is. Maybe the third one? Yes. So disarm. While serving as garrison commander, each normal attack has a 10% chance to disarm the target, disabling their normal attacks. It even explains it to you right here. But I want to make sure it's in clear terms. So there's no normal attacks. But again, I just explained what normal attacks and counterattacks are. They're 2 different things. So counterattacks will still work, okay? And the rage will still regenerate, and skills can still be cast. Disarm does not stop skills from being cast. It doesn't stop rage generation, and it doesn't stop the counterattack damage. It just stops normal attack damage. So that is a distinction between disarm and silence. And then there's also a third one, which is our next one, which is disable. And that's an El Cid skill. I think there's a couple other ones that have the same thing, but we'll go over it with El Cid because that's the one that I'm familiar with. I think that's available in some of the newer commanders that I haven't maxed out yet. And disables the target's normal attacks and active skills for 1 second. So again, we just talked about it. There's a difference between normal and counterattack damage. This is basically a beefier disarm. So it stops the normal attack damage and it stops the skill damage. So the only thing that's happening whenever El Cid disables you for 1 second is the counterattack damage. That's it. That's why the damage dips so low. And again, it delays your active skill from being cast for 1 second if you were about to cast it. Okay, now if he hits it way before you're about to cast anyway, the disable basically only takes away the normal attack damage, and it doesn't really affect your skill damage because you're not really getting delayed from the skill damage. The Joan and Cleo buffs. So again, I've had a lot of questions about that. We've got Joan's first skill. In the next 4 seconds, Joan grants her own troops and nearby friendly forces the buff, and same thing with Cleo. Heal some of the slightly wounded units in your army and nearby friendly armies. Those apply to anybody in your alliance. It does not apply to kingdom mates inside your kingdom in KVK. It definitely applies in Canyon, and it applies in open field combat with your alliance mates around you. Cleopatra's AoE is a lot smaller than Joan's AoE, so something to keep in mind. But again, as long as an alliance mate or your armies are inside of those circles, you will get the benefits from Cleo and Joan's skills. Barbarians and neutral units. Effectively, where's Kira at? There we go. Effectively, neutral units are now barbarians. They've made the statement that there's no distinction between barbarians and neutral units, so something to keep in mind first. Secondly, barbarians and neutral units are not two things: Soroli or Ian's Ballad. So anything inside of these instanced events, which is what they're calling them, Soroli's Crisis, and then also Soroli's Assault, and then Ian's Ballads, are not considered barbarians or neutral units. And that means that the bonuses from a damage dealt to barbarian and other neutral unit skill do not apply. Same thing obviously happens with Minna and his first skill, or not first skill, but third skill. Increases damage dealt to barbarians by troops led by this commander by 50%. Doesn't apply. In Soroli's Assault, Soroli's Crisis, and Ian's Ballads. Same thing with Double C, who's down here at level 50. He has the same thing going on. Damage on barbarians, doesn't apply. Boudica, same thing. Barbarians and other neutral units led by this commander, doesn't apply. Okay, so these only apply on barbarians. And for instance, like forts when you're trying to take them, initial captures of structures in KBK, those all do apply. Soroli Assault, Soroli Crisis, and Ian's Ballads do not. Next one, continuous damage description. So Ramses is a prime example of this one. Deals continuous damage to a single target and reduces the target's defense for 2 seconds. That means there's a damage factor of whatever it's describing each second for however many seconds. So for instance, you have deals continuous damage to a single target for 2 seconds. That means this damage factor applies for 2 seconds. So you'll have a total of 1600 damage factor here. Now his expertise, I believe, increases the damage factor even more. So now it's a 2000 continuous damage factor. Now again, the reason this is confusing is because you have folks like Frederick who have basically the same mechanic, but it says for the next 3 seconds, all attacks have a 100% chance to deal additional damage to the target. This also is basically the same thing as continuous damage. It's just worded differently, which is why I'm making this video, so you guys know what to do. It's the same thing, it's just worded differently. Ramses is basically just a minor version of Freddy as far as the skill damage goes, but it happens faster. It's only 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds, and of course Ramses has a bunch of other goodies that Frederick does not. Artemisia. This is a key thing to keep in mind. Increasing her skill damage by 15% going into... Let's see, where's that? Where's that? Did I miss it? Where's the one where she damages herself? Cause the target to take continuous damage, will also increase the skill damage dealt. That's not it. Increases rage regeneration is 50%. Okay, so here we go. 50% chance to silence herself for 3 seconds, but also all damage dealt by 25%. Okay, so this one, I'm sorry. Deals damage factor 300 to own troops. That's not scalable, that's a set amount. when you're in garrison or any situation that is going to provide dead, you're killing your own troops. This actually kills your own troops. It does not send them to the hospital. It's not a severely wounded thing. This has the same ratio in whatever situation you are in. So if you're in KBK and you're defending a flag, it's 50%. So half the troops go to severely wounded, half the troops go to the mortuary. If you are rallying for some reason with Artemisia, 100% of this damage factor will be going to your hospital. You are killing your own troops in that situation as well. And then, of course, again, if you have a full hospital, every time you damage yourself, that is also a 100% dead situation. You are killing your own troops with Artemisia. She is a risk cutter through and through. And I hope you guys are having fun with Artemisia. Okay, next one. This is number 23. When attacking cities. So, for instance, we've got commanders like Baybars, and there's quite a few that have this verbiage. If I can click Baybars instead of passing them. Here we go. So, Baybars, when attacking a city. Where's it at? Is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. When attacking cities. This does not only apply to rally. This applies to swarming as well. I just want you guys to know that. It's not very clear. It's something that somebody had asked me a long time ago, and I had asked it, and that was the answer. This applies to any time you are attacking a city in any way, shape, or form. So if you are doing a single army attack on a city, if you're early game, or if you're just wanting to kill your troops, or if you're doing a rally, this also applies as well. This applies in both situations. And finally, number 24. Mr. Barca is going to come in handy on this one. So, outside of Alliance territory. So, number 4 skill here. When battling outside of Alliance territory, increases damage to all of Hannibal's troops. Increases damage of all Hannibal's troops, not to Hannibal's troops, sorry about that, by 15% for 3 seconds. So, this applies basically on the normal way you would think, right? So in open field, if you're on your territory, this does not apply. If you're off your territory or in enemy territory, this does apply. But some special circumstances where you might want to figure out if it does apply. Arc, yes. And Sunset Canyon and Lost Canyon, yes. So they apply to both of those situations. Those are considered off Alliance territory. These percentages do apply. So that was number 24. This video definitely went long, but I wanted to give you all the comprehensive breakdown of all these verbiages. I'll try and do some kind of graphics as well for you, so you can kind of read through it instead of having to listen to me babble about it. But all this information is really, really good, and this answers probably 20% of the questions I get on a daily basis. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I will see you guys next time. Cheers, have a good one, and take care.